right, looks like people are showing up for our monthly webinar. A couple of attendees have joined. We'll give them a few more minutes, let people log in, grab a cup of coffee. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Alex Shartis, and he is someone I've known for a while now, and is working on a new idea in the email marketing space, and that's why I asked him to join us and take you through some ideas about cold email outreach and how founders, startups, people in the go-to-market space can continue to use that channel to market themselves. Alex, I don't know if you want to say hello. We got an intro slide for you, but I figure we'll have a little chit chat while people join.
Yeah, no, I mean, we can talk about this. I don't, is that a Testarossa? What's the car in yeah.
Oh,
We talk
buddy.
about cold email too, but I feel like the vibes are so good. It's hard not to talk about them here.
Oh my God. Yeah, someone actually commented, he said he was going to show O'Connor. He was like, I love anything that's so unapologetically synthwave and Outrun. You remember Outrun? You're a
Yeah.
similar age to me. Yeah. Uh, I'm a huge fan of that. I don't even know, like, I just all felt really good. Like I love that aesthetic of like bitmap 80s video games and the whole retro feel.
Yeah, it's
And
sort
that
of like,
came, yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, it's like OG Grand Theft Auto. Like the first Grand Theft Auto was Miami. And this
Yeah,
is
maybe it was like moving to Seattle too. I really wanted to feel connected to the California sun and vibes, you know?
yeah. Yeah, no, I think anyway, I think it's great. I feel like we just have a lot of fun stuff to talk about, so I'm looking forward to getting into it. I don't
Yeah.
I can't see who's in yet, so um
Yeah, I see attendees are logging on. We got 5 people. I'm sure a few other note takers will show up, but you know, note takers, they're always late to the party. Um, well, let's get started here. Do you want to go to the next slide?
yeah, let's go next slide here.
All right, just quick intro about me. I'm sure if you're attending this, you probably know a little bit about me. But yeah, my name's Gregory. I worked in the San Francisco Bay Area in startups and high tech for over 20 years. Worked at a couple of very successful startups. Worked at a number of other ones that I like to say were abysmal failures. You know, I had a great run with InMobi. Um, Saw that company grow from relatively small startup to hundreds of people. They raised $250 million from SoftBank, got to travel the world as global director of marketing. Then had another startup with some engineers who left called TapSense that we started with 3 people and scaled to $10 million run rate and was eventually sold to Wish.com. And then, you know, I was a VP of marketing at a large established tech company, managed a 30-person team. So I always like to say, like, I've seen every stage. And what I love is early stage companies. And that's why doing what I'm doing now as a micro fractional CMO is something that I'm really passionate about and excited to do. All right. Do you now next?
Next slide.
All right. You want to do it? You want me to
Sure,
give you
I
a
can
quick
do it.
intro? Yeah.
I'm Alex Shartzis. I help founders grow their businesses. For a while, for the last 5 years or so, I've done that as a fractional or advisor. And so work with people not in the micro fractional sense, but more in the macro fractional sense, who either a day or two a week, or even, even an hour every other week. But it's a very one-on-one practice where we're dealing with the startup's specific challenges and not challenges in general. Today, obviously, we'll talk about the general challenge, but if people have their own specific challenge they want to bring, I think it's always better to talk about specifics. So happy to dive into a couple case studies here. Before that, I worked at a bunch of companies. There are a couple that didn't make the list, but I overlapped with Gregory when I was at TripIt. We did a deal with Sojourn back in the early days of online data and advertising, and then Drawbridge was in the mix there. Drawbridge, I was the 5th employee there, first business guy. I got it to 10 million in revenue in just 13 months. And so a lot of the things we did there, I help other people do for their business. Um,
Funny,
and
I think Drawbridge was the same time period as TapSense.
yeah, I think it was. I think it was almost exactly the same actually. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. All
so
right.
yeah. Should I go next here?
Yeah, let's do it. So I'll kick us off. Then, of course, I want to hear from you. But I did some research and like my own experiences regarding email marketing. Like everyone I talk to says it's getting tougher. But I think this is true across the board in marketing, not just in email, right? Like click-through rates are going down overall, costs are going up. Google is getting harder and harder to use. So I don't think it's anything unique to the email channel. But like we did see some changes with how platforms are handling spam filters, and they're just kind of tightening up the way that they operate, which is making it more difficult for delivery. But email is still an excellent channel, one that I recommend, one that I focus on, one that I use. And so I pulled a few stats here to get some current data for us to kind of frame this and provide some context. So, of course, like B2B companies are reporting $36 to $42 of return on $1 spent with email marketing. So, fantastically high ROI. I know you, Alex, but that's always been my experience is like it's a low cost channel and you can really get a lot of scale out of it. So the ROI has always been good and remains really good, right? Open rates, this is what I got was around 15%. There's a lot of debate around how accurate open rates are. And I'd love to hear your
Yeah.
perspective on it. Like it was funny to talk with a bunch of Beehive people, and there's a big debate too about like, does open rates matter? But then people are like aim for like there's a certain number in terms of open rates. So I'm actually really curious to hear what
Yeah.
you think about open rates. And of course, we got some more data on click-through rates, 3 to 6%, which I actually think is a good click-through rate if you're able to get that. Yeah, I'm curious. Like, what do you think about these numbers in terms of like open rate, click-through rate? Are they accurate? Should people pay attention? Like, what is your perspective on it?
Yeah, they seem accurate to me. That actually might be a good segue into the next slide.
All right, let's do it.
See what we did there. They're two different kinds of emails. And so I think that your open rate and your click-through rate are going to really depend on what kind of a campaign or what kind of an email you're sending. So, the beehives, like I would put that more in the digital marketing bucket,
Hmm.
where, you're sending emails at scale. But it's not, I mean, there's a difference between a one-to-one email and a beehive or newsletter marketing email, right? Your expectations should be a little bit different. Getting a 15% open rate on one of those emails would be pretty good in my opinion. Like I know I run a newsletter, Seed to Sequoia, which I know Gregory gets, and some of the ideas for articles have come from our discussions. That gets like a 40% to 50% open rate. Every once in a while I'll write like a really like viral post and it'll jump to 60. But Skip, which is a much smaller audience, much more focused on email outbound, like that newsletter gets a 70% open rate. So my point is like your mileage may vary. Like I'd like to think we're kind of at the top of the game there, but given that this is what I do for a living, but if you lump that in with all of the checked out marketing managers who are just like going through the motions and getting a 10% open rate or less, I feel like that fits. But that's digital marketing. We'll come back to the distinction. I think when you're talking about, one-to-one campaigns, if you give it thought, you can still end up with an 8% open rate if you're not, or 15% open rate if you're not giving it a lot of thought. But once you start, doing more of a sales driven, like one-to-one email, I would hope your open rate's, 30 to 40%. And your click-through rate could still be 3 to 6. I think 3 to 6 is pretty good, but we've seen as high as 10 to even 20%, depending on how compelling the offer was and how well known the brand was. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I think to jump into this, like even if you're sending cold emails, there are two different kinds of things you're doing here. One is a micro campaign. That's when it's like, oh, hey, I'm going to TechCrunch this year, and I'd like to meet with founders of AI companies that have raised a Series B, right? And you send an email to those people. That I would put in the micro campaign bucket, where you've given a lot of thought to it. You've done maybe some research on individuals, or maybe at least just in coming up with a list that implied a lot of research. Um, and other things that would fit into this, or even like emailing people that signed up for your wait list or your, want to filled out a form 2 months ago or 3 months ago, right? You're trying to revive cold leads. So they're not people that are completely cold, but it's still a small one-to-one campaign. And there are like, you might 40%, I would expect 30 to 40%, maybe higher in an open rate. The offer that you're giving them, would really depend on the click-through rate, right? If it's like, hey, do you want to come back? Maybe it's low. If it's like, oh, we did a webinar on the subject we talked about, maybe it's a much higher click-through rate. On the digital marketing thing, I think is interesting because you have all these AI SDRs out there. And if you guys haven't heard of them, there are companies like 11x, AI SDR, of course. Um, there's Throxy, which just came out of Y Combinator, and probably half a dozen others. And these companies essentially are trying to replace agencies. So it's like, hey, just tell us who you want to go get. We've got the infrastructure. We'll go email them. This is, by the way, where all those spam emails in your inbox are coming from. And I would consider that more like digital marketing. It isn't necessarily a one-to-one sales campaign. It's more like, oh, I could go to Google and spend $3,000 and get 30 leads, or I could go to 11x or one of these AI SDRs and spend $3,000 and get maybe 10 leads. Like, which is more affordable. And it really depends. I mean, some of them are by far the most affordable channel, and for some companies, it just doesn't work. And there's this, just like Google or any other digital marketing, like if you don't put the effort in, it's not going to work as well, right? You might get lucky, but it takes time to get it to work. What Skip does and what we'll talk about is kind of in the middle here. It's more micro campaign, but you can do the digital marketing thing with it. Um, Gregory, any questions or should we jump in?
Oh, that was awesome. A couple points. Like I talked to a guy recently who I guess worked with James Clear, and he told me
Mhm.
that he has a mailing list of over 1 million people, and he's able to maintain a 50% open rate, uh, which is like incredible for a list that size. So that was the only thing I'd add, I guess. So like as your list gets really big, your open rate can go down for a
Yeah,
number of
it's about
reasons.
staying relevant, right? It's
Yeah,
about producing content that people want to read, right? And if you start doing slightly sketchier things like dumping, random lists into your list and, trying to expand your list inorganically, you're going to see your open rate go down, right? Whereas if it's organic people that are opting in, there's no reason necessarily to expect it to. Um,
100%. The only
so,
the only thing I wanted to ask you is just explain Skype. I don't think we fully introduced that to
oh
the
yeah, so Skip is
or
it's
Skip.
spelled like
Yes, sorry.
Skype without an E, but it's pronounced Skip. And funny story when I came up with the name, naming's not in scope for this webinar, but naming's always very hard for startups. When we came up with it, I mean the idea was really like I wanted to send a couple micro campaigns. I did not want to write hundreds of emails by hand. And I realized that AI would really solve that problem. And I was doing that a little bit for my own business, but more for my clients. Like a bunch of my clients were paying us a bunch of money to do cold email for them as an agency. And I realized that my team was using a lot of AI to write the emails. And if we took the team out of it or at least changed how they worked and made it more AI focused, we could actually do much better job. So a long way of saying like we help companies, generally founders and startups, so teams of up to about 5 people, do execute on one-to-one sales emails using AI. We get really good results. Like we have one campaign. I still don't know why, but they're getting like an 85% open rate. And it's like I don't even open like my wife. I don't open 85% of my wife's emails. So like, what are they like? What do we do? What's the AI doing that's so
That's
good about
funny.
this? But for whatever reason, like their value prop is just so compelling for that industry, and that industry is, I guess, bored and doesn't have enough emails, and so they're like, "Great, I'll open this one." I still haven't figured it out. You'd think that the click-through rate would be low, but the click-through rate's like 60%. So it's sort of like, well, whatever we're doing, like it works. But anyway, the goal is really to help founders and small teams get their outreach done in 15, 20 minutes a week, rather than having to learn a bunch of stuff that we'll actually get into in a few minutes.
Awesome. Oh, the only thing I want to mention, people on the webinar, like if you want to ask questions, there should be a tab to allow you to do that. And so put your questions in there as we're going through the webinar, and we'll do our best to address them if it makes sense while we're speaking. And if not, we'll just read them all and answer them all for you at the end. So ask questions as we go, and we'll figure out a way to manage that. But yeah, we'd love to hear what you guys think
Cool.
and what question you have.
Yeah, I'd love to answer questions. By the way, I can't see the chat, Gregory, so if you can like
Yeah, I
stop me
got
or
it
put
open.
something.
I don't see anything in there, so like, yeah, feel free to start putting stuff in there.
Cool. Well, let's jump in. So, first thing, I think this it doesn't go without saying because so many people don't do it. If you're doing email, and in all this, I'm talking more about outbound and cold emails than I am about that marketing newsletter update. We can come back at the end to whether that's a good outbound strategy because it might be, but um, you got to nail your ideal customer profile, your ICP. So if you say your target market is men and women ages 18 to 75, I mean, I guess you've excluded the trans people, which is something, but like, it would be you would have more success if you were like trans people 18 to 75 than you would everybody else. Like you need a narrower market. And if you try and target everybody, you're just not going to have a lot of success. And you're gonna tire of the channel. You're gonna burn a bunch of money, and you're gonna be out. So I think that when you see that $1 million list that has a 50% open rate, it's because they have a perspective and they're targeting a certain audience, and that they might be product managers, but there are a million of them out there, and they're interested in what they have to say. I think if you're trying to just say startup employees, or any SaaS Series A company, it's still too broad. And so I think you really want to think about your ICP, and I would even put yourself in their shoes and maybe go ask ChatGPT what a persona exercise is. But what do they drink coffee or tea when they wake up? Like, or do they drink nothing? Do they like what does their day look like, and when is your email getting to them, and how does that fit in with what they're looking for? And if you don't do that, the rest of this you just throw out the rest of the stack.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I act I, like with almost any campaign I run, I generally think of them as like micro campaigns in general, and like
Yeah.
having a very narrow focus, very narrow like list, like maybe anywhere from like 10 to 200 targets. I really don't do things larger than that, to be honest. I just run a lot of
Yeah, no, and I think that's the winning strategy. Turns out you're good at this stuff. Um,
them.
so so I think that we're going to get into a couple just like basics, which people don't realize. You, email has gotten a lot harder to send today. So if you were talking about this 5, 10 years ago, the slides, about half these slides wouldn't be here. But today you need to have a secondary domain. So what is a secondary domain? Here's some examples. Like you can go to use Skip, you can go to any of these, you'll see something there. Most of them redirect to Skip. The founder sales one's its own, but it doesn't matter what it is. It just can't be your primary domain. Why is that? Google will actually kick you out of Google Apps if you send too many unsolicited emails and get marked as spam too much from your primary domain. So, not to mention, you'll end up with your regular emails, like your actual from Alex emails or from Gregory emails, going into somebody's spam folder, which nobody wants. Your apps, if you run an application from that domain, their emails will go into spam folders. So you want to set up a secondary domain if you're doing this at scale. So if you're sending 10 or 20, you don't need to do this. But if you're sending 200 a month, right? Or if you're sending emails to 200 contacts and you're sending 5 follow-ups, it's actually 1,000 emails, right? You need to do this. You need to set up a secondary domain. It costs $10. It doesn't really matter what it is. People don't really pay a lot of attention to it. As soon as you get a reply, you switch over typically to your primary domain, or they click the calendar invite link, and it doesn't matter. But it's basics. You got to do it, or you can end up in the penalty box, and it can take a few months to get out of the penalty box.
I like this. This is what I can do with all the silly domains I keep buying. So I got Vibe Marketer with no vowels.
Oh,
That's my
nice. Yeah, no, I mean,
yeah.
it matters a little bit, but like founder sales is one that we got at some point. I was, I was on GoDaddy experimenting with stuff, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I was like, oh,
That's
well, if
cool.
we're gonna
Yeah.
email founders, why don't we try this one? And actually we're gonna name it founder sales, and then we felt like that was too constricting of a name. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just basic, it's table stakes. Do it, don't think about it,
I
don't
have
question
one
it.
quick question about it. So you
Yeah.
just buy the domain and then you like literally spin up like a Google workspace around it?
No, no, well, yes and no. So we do this. So a bunch of the stuff you should never have to learn. So like we do it for you like, I mean, I
All
say
right,
that
that's good to know.
jokingly, but I've talked to founders who are like, oh, I spent 2 months like learning about DNS settings, which we'll get into, and secondary domains, and I have this whole thing set up, and it's like, dude, like you created zero enterprise value and all of that stuff. You could have just paid anybody $1,000 a month or whatever to do that for you, and like you'd be better off. So I think a big part of Skip's value prop is like it's just part of the price. We do it for you. If you work for the big SDR, AI SDR companies, like for $5 grand a month, 11x will also do it for you. I mean, by do it for you, I mean like we will go out, come up with the ideas for the domains, register them, set up the email accounts, do the rest of it. And we do that because we've done this for a while. Like our costs are lower on that anyway, and we're more efficient about it. But yeah, if you wanted to do it yourself, you would go to GoDaddy or whoever your registrar of choice is. You would look for a few domains, hopefully pick the $10 ones, register them, go over to Google or some other Google reseller, buy the Google email accounts. Don't buy the GoDaddy email accounts. They don't work for this. And we've tried, they're cheap. We tried, doesn't work. And then set up those email domains, configure, we'll get into it, but configure some more stuff and off you go. It takes a couple weeks, like throughput, because it like just the amount of time it takes and the distraction. But yes, that's how you would do it.
All right, one more question. If someone was to work with you with Skip, you do all this for them, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Literally like 15-minute setup call, and then that's it. And we'll get into the other stuff they have to do as well. This is an easy one. Doesn't really, like, if you create these domains, just do a permanent redirect to your primary domain so
Mhm.
that, somebody does look at your URL in the email you sent. They actually see your product. They don't see some like parked landing page at GoDaddy with ads for other people's stuff. So super simple, shows a little bit more polish. Um, Part of the reason why you need multiple domains, which I maybe should have covered first, is you can't send that many emails per email account anymore. Because again, Google and Microsoft and everybody have gotten much more aggressive in how they mark things as spam and how they control people's email accounts. So if you sign up for an email like alex@skipisawesome.com, and I go and I register that email today, and then I set up a Google account, alex@skipisawesome, and then I send 1,000 emails today, I will immediately get kicked off. Like, because Google's like, wait a minute, this is what new employee, like what company like registered and sent 1,000 emails in their first hour of employment, like 0 people, right? Bunch of bots, 0 humans. So basically what you need to do is set up multiple domains with multiple emails on each domain. And they might all be Alex, right? Alex at UseSkip, Alex at TrySkip, a.chartsis at TrySkip, alex.s, like permutations of me at a domain. But then you rotate them. So you're figuring out like which emails are warmed up, which we'll get into, and then which emails have capacity, right? If you're only sending an email that was, think about it, you hire a person, how many emails do they send in their first week of work? 200 a day? I don't think so, right? They're sending 10 a day. So you end up having to make it look a little bit more human so that the bots don't stop your bots from sending emails.
God, this is all the inbox warming that you hear about.
Right. Yeah. I think it's separate because you need to do both, right? You need to have multiple
Mm,
inboxes, then you need to warm them up.
I see. Okay, cool.
Yeah, you need to set up your, I don't even want to talk about the slide. It brings back bad memories. But you have to do a bunch of DNS stuff that you have to get right, or your emails will go straight to spam. And you can feel, I've talked to clients who feel really good about all the emails they send, like, oh, I sent 3,000 emails last month. How many meetings you get? 0. And you go in there and you're like, yeah, your DKIM and your DMARC aren't set up, and Google's just immediately spam. Like 0 people ever saw your email. The opens that you got were like automatic bot opens. None of them were real humans. Um, so I think this is something you need to do. You can Google it. ChatGPT will walk you through it. Takes a couple weeks, takes a few hours, but over a couple weeks because it's DNS, so you have to maybe have to wait 24 hours to make sure it propagated, and then go back, and if it didn't propagate right, do it again. What we've found is that it's just easier for us to register the domains as part of the service, because we can then go do the DNS setup with either humans or bots. It doesn't matter. If your CTO owns domains at your company and is a busy guy, right? Like how quickly are your emails going to get set up versus the critical product stuff that your CTO is working on? Like we've seen it take weeks just because somebody was busy, and they wanted control over the domains, but they didn't actually have the time to set them up properly. So don't send emails unless you set this up. And by the way, this is true of your regular email too. If you haven't set these things up for your regular, like normal email, go do that right now.
Where are these set up? And it's in the Google settings?
They're in the DNS. So like you basically get the, if you're on Google Apps, you get what
Hmm.
Google wants it to be. You go to your DNS provider, whether that's Google or GoDaddy or whomever, and there's like an SPF setting, and you cut and paste the thing that Google tells you to cut and paste into it. Um, these are things that are like authenticating your email,
Hmm.
opt out kind of stuff. Like it's not worth learning what any of these things stand for. It's just
Yeah.
I don't want to fill people's brains with useless stuff, but it's just you gotta do it, or your emails are gonna go to spam. Um, so we're over halfway through. For those people who have other things to do with their day than talk about cold email, you have to warm your emails up. So if you register an email and start sending 20 emails a day, it will immediately be marked as spam to people that don't open and read them. So the warm up stuff is just bots pulling bots. Basically, one service sets up an email. Let's say it's Alex at USkip and there's Alex at TrySkip, right? Alex at USkip will email Alex at TrySkip. A bot will open the email and email back to Alex at USkip, and then Google thinks, oh, these are real people that are emailing each other. It's pretty much that simple. Um, Maybe you could vibe code it. There are a bunch of services out there if you're rolling your own solution that are anywhere from 50 to $100 a month that let you do this, on your emails. I think the only thing to be aware of is that you do run into like it's actual emails in the actual inbox. So depending on how you're using that email account, like don't do this on your regular email because you'll get a bunch of looks like spam that isn't actually spam from the warm up process. This is really something for those dedicated outbound email accounts. But if you don't do it, again, immediately spam, no responses, no opens, no clicks, just straight to spam.
All right.
Yeah, there's really nothing to talk about. It's just you gotta do it. It's amazing how many people haven't heard about this stuff, and so I mean, I don't I think it's just now you know. Um, So this gets into the more strategic things. So I think a lot of people write emails that are in their own language, right? Whatever your terms are for your product, or like you need to spend you spent time selling your product. And I assume most of the audience is early stage, right? You've talked to a lot of customers, you've got design partners. Use the words that those people use. Don't use your own words for stuff. Use their language. This is just messaging 101. Um, and the more targeted your campaign is, the more specific your message is. Like, oh, we solve X problem for startup employees is very different than we help startups close their books at the end of the month for busy CFOs or something, right? Or founders who don't have an outside CFO, right? Like generic startup employee language is going to be a lot less connected and a lot lower performing than, connecting with a startup CFO or connecting with a startup go-to-market person. Right. And even within go-to-market people, like, are you a GTM engineer? Is that who you're reaching out to? Or are you reaching out to like the sales guy who's hacking around with GTM stuff? So I think the more specific you can be to your customer and your ideal customer and your prospect, the better your campaigns will run.
Yeah, I could probably talk for like an hour about this. I even saw a post this morning on LinkedIn where someone being very critical of like a cold email that they had received, and a lot of the time they're just too vague. They're like, "Hey, nice to virtually meet you. Let's have a chat." It's like they just don't cut to the chase and present
Yeah,
you as a very
that sounds like AI written right there. Yeah,
right.
I think it's also hard because there's so much AI that's been trained on all these crappy emails. So it's like, oh, hey, I just wanted to follow up with you again. Some people like those emails, but they just don't perform as well.
They're like all too vague and stuff. And the other thing I really do not like with these new AI tools is like the hyper specific, pulling all kinds of random data that does not sound conversational, is not how anyone talks. Like the whole like, they like quotes your CEO or something. Like for me, I find that actually the worst. Like it creates like this kind of term paper that like normal people would never write, right? Like I've
Well,
never, that's been my
this is
experience, but
yeah, I mean, it's the vestige of the Show Me You Know Me campaign, which, 5 years ago was great because it's like, oh, if you actually watched my YouTube or you like read my CEO's recent blog post, I kind of feel like I should reply to you because you put some effort in and you're not just a bot, hi blank. I noticed you were blank title at blank company. Do you want to talk? Right? It was like, oh, this person actually put in some effort. Now it's an indicator that you used AI to write the email and you actually put in less than no effort because you didn't even have to come up with my name. Like the AI SDRs will go out there and just look for every startup founder, period, and then just spam them. And so it's like almost like those things have almost become a negative indicator of like, oh, this is definitely not a human because nobody would quote my CEO. Like nobody watched that webinar. There were, 8 people there. Like, why would
Exactly. It's like
I?
no one's listening to the quarterly call and then 45 minutes in, like heard what the CEO says and then quotes that and it's just not, it's not normal. And then literally quotes it like in quotes. It's not even a paraphrase or anything like that. Like I looked
Well,
at those
what's
and I was
worse,
like, yeah,
what's worse is
terrible.
like I think that there's this trickle down thing from enterprise sales where people think like, oh, if I give ChatGPT the 10K and like know what the company priorities are that they put in the 10K, and then I go reach out to my customer, my prospect, and say like, hey, your CEO said this is a priority. Like that's you punching down. That's something else. Like nobody likes that, right? Like I don't know what the word is for it, but like
Yeah.
nobody wants to be told what their CEO said in their 10K, like
No, it's very
period, right?
uncomfortable.
And like just because it was in the 10K doesn't mean it's actually a priority. So there are all these enterprise, I don't know where it came from, but I've talked to a lot of clients who are like, oh yeah, we're like reading the 10Ks. I'm like, what? You need to have conversations with people about what they actually care about. The stuff that they did in the 10K is meant for Wall Street. Like there's no reason
Yeah.
that anything they said there has any actual bearing on their business. And anybody can read it. Like you need a relationship with somebody on the inside who can tell you what they really care about, not just like, oh yeah, it was in your 10K. So you have to buy my software because it'll obviously like never worked. Um,
Hey, we got a good question that's appropriate for this conversation. So someone's asking, is it possible to be like overly micro? Like, can you be too specific? Is that possible given like our recommendation here?
No, I don't think so. I think that the challenge becomes, right, can you scale it? So I mean, throughout history, people have sent one-on-one sales emails and those still work great. So I think you can absolutely be like, oh, I'm gonna go spend 10 minutes researching Alex, like learning about him and sending him an email. And like that can be super effective. Whether you have a product like Skip write it, ChatGPT write it, you write it yourself, that's great. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I think if you write an essay, we'll get into this, but if it's like a 200 word email, that may or may not be productive. It really depends. But so no, I mean, I think like it's a question of investment, right? If you're trying to send 200 emails, it's hard to put in that same amount of research time, but you absolutely can. And I mean, one of the things we realized with Skip was that all these AI SDR products were made for like selling broadband internet to small businesses. Like those, like we're selling to everybody markets where you could send 10,000 emails a week and never run out of people to email. I think when you talk about a micro campaign or like how small can you go, if you're selling something that only like 10 telcos in the US can buy, and the only person who would buy them is the CIO or the CTO or whatever, like, yeah, like spend a couple hours on that email and email those those 10 people, right? Versus trying to spray and pray or use AI for a thing that AI isn't built for. So it really depends on like your business. I would just caution you that like you might not get better results by spending an hour on each micro campaign one-on-one email versus like taking a small step back and saying, okay, I'm going to come up with a list of 50 telco workers that are in this, thing, and do a little research and run a campaign that way versus like trying to be super micro. But I think no, you can one-on-one is as micro as you can go and it's still super effective.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something in passing there that I think is really important. And like I got this feedback actually when I sat in a sales meeting one time with one of the best salespeople or sales managers on the team, and he talked about like having the right expectations. And like most people, they go in for the kill like way too early. So like you're trying to just kind of move the relationship and the conversation along. So don't send one email and expect them to buy your like $100,000 SaaS product, right? It's like send them
Yeah.
email expecting them to maybe write you back. And
Or
like,
even not even that, or like go to your website and just be aware
Yeah,
that
just
you
check it
exist,
out.
right?
Like take a look at our website. Like it'd be great. Yeah, just like having the right expectations about moving it along and building a relationship. Yeah, he was fantastic at giving people like really good actionable feedback. And that was what I saw like most junior sales BD, even marketing people, is their expectations are just they want to go from A to Z too quickly. It's like you got to
Yeah.
go from A to B to Z. Like it takes time to get there and like make that your goal, right? Just move. Hey, we actually got them to go to the website, or they actually opened this up, or like we're making
Yeah,
progress.
let's see if we get lucky. That might be the next slide. No, the next slide's keep it short. I don't even know if we need to talk about this. I want to talk about what you just talked about, but like 80 words might feel really short, but that's long enough. Remember, people are probably 80% of the time looking at this on their phone. That's around a screen, maybe slightly more depending on their font size. Like anything over 80 words is you talking too much. Like keep it super short. Um, can I go on to the next one? Because I think it's the calls
Go
to
for it.
action,
Yeah.
which is it's in, yeah, boom. All right. So CTA is a call to action. Um, you want just one and you want it to be reasonable. I didn't put the reasonable thing on here because it isn't obvious. People do stuff all the time. But if it's like, here, wire me. I remember I got a new phone number at one point, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer than that now. And this phone rings one day. It's like, is Dave there? I'm like, no, who's Dave? And um, it turned out this happened like 15 times a day. So finally I was like, yes, Dave, what's up? And it turned out that Dave bought stocks and he was on some list for brokerages, and all these people would call and ask and pitch Dave their latest stock tip. And
Mm.
so I was like, yeah, I'm a sales guy. I'm like, yeah, let's see where this goes. Yeah, it's Dave, what's up? He's like, oh, I got this great idea. I think, Gilead is going to take off. Like, it's a great time. I'm like, oh yeah, dude, like, I agree. What do we do next? He's like, well, like you wire me 25 grand. I was like, I wire you, like, uh, you just called
No
me on the
idea
clock
who
for
you are. Yeah.
85 seconds and now I wire you 25 grand. Like that's great. Yeah, where do I send the wire? Let's go. I mean, it's sort of like, it's like, no, like, oh, this is my brokerage, or, like, this is like, there's no rapport building. He was just a young guy who was probably in Long Island. Like, oh yeah, I got one. Like, he picked up the phone and he's gonna buy, right? He thinks my idea is a good idea. Or so I think that, like, you've got to be reasonable about what you ask for. And I think um first off, at least he said just wire me money. He didn't give me a menu of things I could do, so he did that part right. But I think you think about this as digital marketing, right? Like, that CTA doesn't have to be meet with me, right? It doesn't have to be wire me 25 grand. It could be, uh, you know, check out a case study. It could be join a webinar. Webinars are great for this because if somebody doesn't know you that well, but your email really hit a nerve and you're like, oh, I have this problem. Um, for example, I got one, I can't remember the name of the company, but it's at the top of my email. I got a cold email from a company that manages cold email infrastructure, and it was made it into my inbox, which is a win. They've emailed me at least 5 times, but I'm like, like, I'm going to save this. This is interesting, right? And their CTA wasn't like book a call. Their CTA was like, go check out our customer list. Like, these are the people we work with, a bunch of people like you, like, go check it out. Right. And so even though they might, if they were looking at their stats, be like, oh, this was a loss. This guy, we sent an email, didn't get a reply, got an open, no reply. And I didn't click, I just went to their website. Right.
Yeah.
It did result in me knowing about them and thinking about them. And now, like, we have a service that does what they do, but I'm like, or we might build one, but now they're in the mix. Now it's like, oh, you guys, I sent it to my CTO. Like, can you guys check this out? See if it's worth, like, swapping out the other one, right? It seems better. But you only get there, like, it's digital marketing. It isn't direct response. And I
Yeah.
think they only got there because they were really clear, really short email, one call to action, like, go check out our customer list. That's pretty cool. Um,
I totally made this mistake recently. It's when I saw this slide, and there's some people that I was like inviting to. I have a bunch of events that I'm doing, and I can't remember exactly who they were. They're pretty senior people, and I invited them to two events, and I could see there was all this confusion. I was like, I felt like a total idiot, right? Like, I should have just like been very clear about like there's this one event that I think you'd be the right fit for, or something like that. And if they didn't respond, then maybe follow up with the next one.
well,
But
yeah, they
yeah,
don't respond. I
I
mean, that's
totally did
so.
that.
What Skip does is it takes your CTAs and it mixes them throughout the campaign. So if you're sending 7 emails and you have 3 things you want to ask people to do, right, it'll mix them in.
Oh, that's
so that
cool.
you aren't putting two in one email, but if they happen to open any given email, it's like, oh, I should go check out the competitive list, or oh, I should book a call, right? Versus like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. There are too many options. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah, I've totally done
everybody
that.
does this and just like, great, oops, still doesn't work. Moving on. Um,
Yeah.
so so moving with quality. So I think somebody asked about, should I send a micro campaign to like one or five or 10 people, or is there too such a thing as too small? I think at the end of the day, you're still managing a digital marketing channel. And so you have to just use the percentages and play the odds. If you get I would say like you need to fix stuff if you're not getting a 30% open rate, even though the industry average is 15, like that's not very good. So, if you're not getting a 30% open rate, you got to work on your subject lines and who you're reaching out to, right? Once you get there, you got to, figure out, are people taking you up on your offer? And if they're going to your website, and not replying to you as your website, converting them, right? But you need, ultimately this is about new customers. So you need to kind of look at each step in the process and figure out what's working and what's not working. Like if you hire a person or work with a company like Skip, or have, Gregory as an advisor, like you'll go through that. Like that's what people do. If you're new to cold email, and you're just you might end up in like an anxiety pain cave where you're just like, it's not working, right? I'm spending all this time and it's not working, which benefits nobody. But there are fixes to all of this stuff. And if you do everything right and you've tried to fix it and it doesn't work, email marketing doesn't work for every industry. Stop doing it, right? Go do something else. Try Google, try newsletter ads. There are lots of other channels to try if this one doesn't work for you. But you're not, I think one of the big mistakes people make is they run a couple test campaigns of 50 email people or 200 people or whatever, and they're like, I didn't get any meetings. And it's like, yeah, at a 0.5% meeting rate, if you didn't send hundreds and hundreds of emails, probably 1,000, you shouldn't expect a meeting. There's a very non-zero likelihood that you don't have any meetings, even though things are going fine. So I think if meetings are your goal, or new customers are your goal, you need to get to a volume level that's significant. And just for startup founders out there, if you can't find 2,000 people to email a month, or at least, let's say at least 1,000, you need a bigger market. Like, unless you're like, oh, I know the CIO of Verizon, so I'm going to sell him a $1 million SaaS tool. Great. Right. But if your market is 10 people, it's great to be micro targeted, but that's too micro targeted. Like it's going to be tough. So figure out a way to have a bigger market that's still micro targeted, but not 10 people. Because
Yeah, that's an
you need
interesting
to be
point.
able to send volume.
I feel like, and I'm curious to hear your feedback on this too, like who it is a good fit for. So in my experience, with all the people I talk to, I find it's the like very engineering focused type of like founder, very technical, where cold email works really well for them. I think it's because uh, uh, they're not as comfortable with social media would be like the simplest answer. Like email works really well for them. And I think if you're selling a very technical product, like generally selling to other technical people. And so this kind of works. It's kind of like this one-way thing. The value prop's really clear. You just kind of send enough out there and eventually you get some bites. And that's been my experience, right? Like with like people I've met on like Reddit and stuff who have like an indie SaaS, they were just like, dude, I've just sent like a ton of cold email and like they made it work. It was quite interesting. I'm curious like what your thoughts are like
Yeah,
who
I
you
mean,
think is a good fit for this type of approach.
I think like at a high, so first off, that's the key thing, right? You're thinking about like, oh, this engineer doesn't spend time on social media. Where do
They're
I
just not
reach
good at it
them?
and they don't have a following
Right.
and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with
Right. And
that.
so but that's like, well, oh, you mean like the founder? I mean, also the
Yeah, the founder.
partners, right?
Yeah, they don't have
Yeah.
any like following. They don't want to post regularly. I think that's part of it. And I think the target, they don't post that or spend that much time on social media either.
Right. Now, if you're selling to marketers, like Gregory and I are on LinkedIn all day, right? So like we're there, you'll
Exactly.
find us, right? If you're selling to salespeople, they're on LinkedIn all day, maybe in Sales Navigator where they're not going to see your message, but like LinkedIn is not a bad place. If you're selling to engineers, like they're only in LinkedIn if they're looking for a job. So if you're trying to find people that are looking for a job, maybe that's a great place to work. But I think you really got to put yourself in that person's shoes And I think it's a good point. It's a channel that's available to people that don't want to spend time on LinkedIn or don't want to, invest in Google or what have you. I would think about it. The industry, it's hard to predict up front where it would work. There's some
Mhm.
industries where people are just not on phones that much, where it is not a great channel. Construction, right? Like your contractors are driving around in their F-150s. Like it's not a very email heavy industry. I don't know
Yeah,
if
yeah,
it would
yeah.
work super well there. Manufacturers, like depending on who it is in a manufacturing company, sometimes it's really good, but if you're trying to reach people that are on the floor, it might not be very good. So, but if it's a big corporate manufacturer, like, yeah, those people do email because they're big corporate people. So it depends on very much on your target audience and like what they do with their day. Um, emails, I mean, like emails been dying for the last 20 years, I mean, it's still there. It's still a key part of everybody's workday. So it's usually worth a shot. I think something else you talked about though, Gregory, is super important where it's like, what are you doing? Like, who are you targeting and when are you targeting them? Like, it's one thing to say like, oh, truck drivers are a bad audience because they're not on email. Like, I don't know. Maybe if you email them at midnight, like that's when they get into a truck stop and they're just killing time because they have to wait 8 hours before they can drive again and they will check email. Like I just, I'm making stuff up, but like really understanding your audience. I think follow-ups, like, you can go to a Reddit thread, possibly figure out who those people are through Apollo or some other email sourcing tool, enrichment tool, and like email them. Be like, hey, even if you don't mention the thread, which you probably shouldn't, they're thinking about whatever it is that was in that post. So same with LinkedIn, like you can go look at people that commented or liked a post, even if it's a competitor's post, send them a cold email. That's a great micro campaign, right? 22 people commented on my competitive CEO's post. Of them, 15 look like they're in my market, right? I'm going to go find their emails in Apollo and send 15, a series of emails to these 15 people that may or may not mention my competitor. Maybe it does, maybe, you try different things. But, I think you do that, right? You don't do that just once, right? You do that like 5 or 6 times and figure out like, is there a formula here that works? Um, so
Yeah,
so yeah, I
I
mean,
think it's dead on. I think it's dead on, like trying to figure out like what the channel or how to make the channel work for you. That's been my experience too with like construction or some of these like very offline industries. They're hard to make them work digitally. So we had the same challenge with small hotels. Like a hotelier, that guy is like fixing toilets and like, fixing beds and checking people in. They don't spend a lot of time in front of a computer, right? But like things have gotten way more digital than they did in the past. And so we did have some insights where it would work at certain times, or there were
right.
certain ways that we could reach them. Like, and I think you're dead on that like marketing salespeople are all on LinkedIn all the time, right? But like engineers are not. And so the idea that like, hey, for very technically focused audience, this works pretty well. Like they do check email and they're very responsive. And so yeah, think about the use case, think about the user, and think about how you can like you can fit this in.
Yeah, I mean, we had the same exact experience with vacation rental managers, like these
Oh
property
yeah,
managers, 10 million, 20 million
exactly.
dollar business. Mondays, they were just up to their eyeballs in all the stuff that went wrong over the weekend, and they would never reply to an email on a Monday. But on Tuesdays, like, you'd get great response rates. And so I think it really depends on that the individual use case. One of my favorites, which when we launch LinkedIn, we haven't launched LinkedIn, but when we do, I'm going to use is like if you're doing that hyper targeting to one person and you're going to send somebody a LinkedIn message, look on their LinkedIn and see when they post. Like most people post it around the same time every day. So send your message when they're posting because they're probably online, right? And so or they're at least logging back in to see if anybody responded or interacted with their post. So, there's smart things you can do. Obviously, like AI, that's one good use of AI. But be smart about it. The good platforms like Skip let you choose the time of day, so you can be like, look, mornings are bad for my audience. I want to send in the evening, or I want to send super early morning, or I don't want to send on Mondays. All those things should be possible. Um, And that's, I think, one of the challenges with outsourcing this entirely to AI and taking the human out of the loop is like the AI only academically understands humans, right? It doesn't actually understand like, oh, that's a, that person's managing a small business and Mondays are bad for him, or, mornings are bad for him or whatever. Like it's just like, did they respond to the email? Well, if you only send 50 emails, it doesn't have enough data. It's never gonna have enough data.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so you need to bring the human insight to the party.
Are we at the last? I got a couple questions, so maybe we can run through the last two slides, and then we can
Yeah, this
have
is just follow up.
open
So if you want to
discussion.
find
Yeah.
us, this is me, Skip.ai. We like we've talked about, we help with this stuff all day, every day. There's a video course on the website. I think these links are clickable. What we send, they might not be clickable in the Zoom context, but if the slides go out afterwards, it's obvious on it's like in the menu. But there's a video course. It's 11 minutes long, covers a bunch of this stuff. There's a newsletter which I welcome you to sign up for. There are people that are like, oh, I'm not gonna use the service, but I love the newsletter. I send it to all my SDRs. It's like great. I guess they get to keep their jobs then. Uh, yeah, I don't know if there's a real need for SDRs with tools like Skip. Like it's a really questionable choice. Um, and then anyway, other places to reach me. I'm always happy to talk to founders. So that'll let you book a time if the QR code will let you book a time if you want to chat.
Okay, the QR code goes to booking a meeting.
Yeah, it goes to booking the meeting, but you can get there pretty much any other way too.
Yeah,
But
the
I
slides will
want
go
to
out.
just say I'm always happy to talk to founders, even if you have no intent to ever do business with me. Like I just like talking to founders and helping them through go-to-market stuff. Um,
Awesome.
so I learned something too from every conversation. Um, this one's you, Gregory.
Yeah, so you guys know me, micro fractional. So I have like a number of ways people can work with me. I have like what I call standard, which generally people that like have raised money, like pre-seed, seed, they hire me in that capacity. And that's why I created this like thing I call core, which is a slimmed down version. It's really cheap. And the only thing I'll say is that it's going to be less money that you spend with me than you'll ever spend on your first or second or third failed ad campaign, which is why I encourage people to like, hey, spend some time with me, get you on Slack, ask questions. I got some frameworks and things you can use. We'll have a 1 hour meeting, and I guarantee it'll be money well spent.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm wasting money on a Google ad campaign right now. So
Exactly
I mean,
right.
it's amazing. I mean, it's, Skip is $100 if you're using it sort of a low volumes, or $1,000 if we're doing a lot of stuff for you. Yeah. And if you don't have good messaging, like even though it's my product, I will tell you, you will waste $1,000. Like there's nothing like having bad messaging in a marketing campaign. Like it's worth spending the effort to get things right before you start spending money on media.
Yeah, I had all these calls with bootstrappers, and finally I just was like, well, what do you guys want to pay? And I was like, all right, well, maybe I could come up with a way to do that. And I was really adamant too to it not be a course. So like it's got a lot of elements where there's all this self-service stuff and frameworks and things you can download and learn from. But what I realized, like if I threw people on Slack, they can ask me questions and I can work with a lot of people simultaneously. And to my surprise, people ask, from my perspective, less questions than I thought that they would. So Slack has been very manageable, but that way you get like real time feedback. And that's always been my challenge with any course or even like book. I'll be reading it or listening to it, and like, well, what about this? Or my thing works this way, or I don't understand what you're saying, right? And that way you can get the clarity that you wouldn't get from like a course. So I like to think of it as like same price or maybe even cheaper than some of the courses out there, but you get real-time feedback and you get to ask questions basically whenever you want.
That's great. Yeah, it's a great model. Um, it's a great model.
And
But
then
yeah, you
you go ahead.
no, you were gonna say you said there were some questions
Oh yeah, so
for
yeah, we can stop sharing too if you
yeah,
yeah, and
that's
that links to the page. So um we did get a question. So Joe, who I've talked with actually many times on social media, he's asking about suggestions for getting up to speed on your ICP when you're in a new industry. That's the situation that he's in right now. So, what would you recommend to someone who wants to like they're focusing on a new area, maybe got a new product they're launching, they're going to try to target new people. Like, what should they do?
I mean, is it hammer looking for nails if I suggest send some cold emails? Um, I think I mean I say that in jest, but I think that if you're going into a new industry, which I've done a bunch of times, both as advising companies and as a founder, pivoting is always fun. You need conversations with customers, and so like my first go-to would be a conference if there's a very cheap conference or event you could go to and meet a bunch of those customers without just guaranteed, right? Because when you show up and you're a human, people talk to you provided you look the part. Great, like show up to a conference or show up somewhere and have a bunch of conversations at once. If that isn't happening in the next 2 weeks, month, like on a timeline that works for you, the best way to get those early conversations is a micro email campaign. Just because you can choose who you're like, oh look, I think that my hypothesis is a mid-level marketing manager at a Fortune 500, right, in with these job titles is the right person to go after. Like emails by far your cheapest and most scalable way to get to those people. LinkedIn would be a distant second just because it's a little bit harder to automate and they're very, very strict caps on how much outbound you can send. Um, but and then you run into the problem that Gregory said, where I don't know you, but if you're a founder without like a good-looking LinkedIn profile, people are going to be less likely to respond. Whereas email is kind of a great equalizer. But
Mm,
but
good
I,
point.
I would I would get the conversations however you can, and I think typically emails is a really good way to get that. And I would say also like feedback is a really good ask. Like if you ask for feedback, your campaigns will perform better. Because if you look credible, oh hey, we raised seed funding and we're considering your market, like people will open that email and they won't feel defensive. They won't feel like, oh, this guy's just going to sell me something. Um, some people will be like, oh, I'd like to help a guy out. I'm glad that they're investing in my market.
I think this is a good question, and I would even break it down to like there's two different ways to like answer this. One is like a very academic one, which you can like do a Google search or ask ChatGPT. It'll give you a bazillion ideas about customer discovery and frameworks and formats and questionnaires and all kinds of things. And I agree 100% about going to the conference. Actually, I think that's an excellent way because like it'll be real in terms of like you're in there and you get to understand who these people are. But I would give you like the vibe answer perhaps, which is like my experimentation with this. So one time I worked for like a health tech startup and I on like academically or on paper, I was like, this is great. I'm gonna maybe I'll even pivot into this industry. And so I was like working with them and I was like, this is not a good fit. Like I did not like these people. It just had a whole like way that it worked. Like, so a really good example that was not a good fit for me was like, I found them to be like overly academic is the term I would use. So like, which is fine. That's how medical industry works. But it didn't occur to me that like that would be also the personalities, right? That everybody has like all kinds of advanced degrees and they're quite proud of it. And like I would get these titles from people that were trying to like work into some event or something, and it would be on like 3 lines. Like the guy would have so many certifications and so many degrees that like to put like PhD laureate like for like and I used to joke like Lord Protectorate of North England like it just was not a good fit for my personality. Like I was like I'm just not someone who is very excited about titles and accolades and even like early in my career, like I won a bunch of advertising and design awards, and I kind of got them and thought they were all kind of garbage. Like I was like, I just don't, I just it's not something I get excited about. And so for me, it was an
Like
important lesson. Yeah, to go to like conference and do it, and I was like, this is not a good fit for like me personally. Like I learned a lot, and I could very academically like analyze it like an anthropologist. It
I have the
wasn't a
same
good.
experience, by the way. We did that, and we ended up when I was running a pricing company, and I ended up at this pricing conference, which I didn't even know was a thing that they had a pricing conference, and it was all these like middle management people. Everybody was like on their management rotation on pricing at some giant Fortune 1000 company or conglomerate or cable or whatever, and I was like, these people suck. Like I don't want to spend time with somebody who's like a corporate automaton. Like I like founders and entrepreneurs and people who move fast, right? These people move like the opposite of fast. They've already told me they're leaving their job in 12 months when their rotation ends, and it takes 3 years to buy anything. Like what? Like why am I wasting my time? Um, So, I think that there is a both from a business standpoint, right, and from a personality standpoint, like it's good to learn that stuff, and I found conferences to be like the fastest way to learn it.
100%. That's why I like that you started with that because like you can do this very academic analysis and like look at it, but if you go to the conference and it's really clear like
Well,
this is what you want to be a part of, right? This is what it's about, right?
yeah, I mean, the academic stuff, I can't stand it. Not the medical stuff, but like the academic, like let's talk to ChatGPT, sure. And if it's a horrible idea, it's a horrible idea. But I think the reality is like, unless you go there, you don't know what the people are like or what they care about, or like have conversations, right? So if those conversations are obtained through emails, or if they're obtained through LinkedIn, or if you have to go to the conference, which is a great and faster way to get those conversations, like you'll find out what the vibe is. Like, do people care about this, or is this annoying? And I mean, there's a great bunch of posts by Adam Robinson on LinkedIn who, had this idea, went to a conference, and people like awkwardly ran away from him because his idea sucked. Right. And they were like trying to, he's like a good looking guy, and he dresses nice. So he walks up to you, you talk to him for a minute, and you're like, I really don't like what this guy's selling. I gotta go get lunch. It's like, you're holding lunch. Yeah, I gotta go get another one. Like, I don't, I really don't want to talk to you. And then the next day he changed his idea. And then people were like leaning in and really wanted to engage. So I think that, you know, that kind of feedback loop is super important. And it's hard to get there and understand like, oh, you don't care about this at all. Like, people will be polite in email, but you're not gonna find out unless you're like having a live conversation.
I think that's excellent, excellent feedback. I'll give you the reverse experience. So like, I never was all that excited about climate tech, and then someone introduced me to like 90 as like a co-working space here in Seattle. And there's one in San Francisco, and it focused primarily on, or I guess exclusively on that. And like, not that I'm against it, just it's just not like an area that I like was excited about. But I got along with everybody, and like, look, I love to ride bicycles. I like living on the West Coast. I'm pretty extreme vegetarian. Like, there's a lot of like personal values that I have that were like a good fit for the type of people who are into that industry. And I ended up having a bunch of great conversations and even have customers in the climate tech space because like from like a personal perspective it was like a really good fit and I was able to like help them with their business as well. But it's not like something that I actively was pursuing, right? So almost like the reverse. And that's why I was kind of like thinking like, oh my God, it's almost like there's like this vibe answer where it's like maybe looking for industries, looking for people, trying to evaluate an ICP or try to understand things from a perspective about like who they are rather than this like overly like prescriptive like
Read the 10K and find out what their priorities are.
yeah, like the the mid-level person on LinkedIn that's gonna say like here's like my questionnaire and like all this stuff and like those things are valuable, like they have a place, but there's a lot more to it. And I think sometimes that can get
Yeah,
lost.
some people are also really good at selling to those people, right? Like they've figured out how to crack the RFP game. And so great,
Mm.
they go get into an industry where RFPs are a thing. But I think it's hard. In spite of the recent trend, it's hard to run a successful startup in a slow buying, stoic state industry. Like it's just you gotta find out what the vibe is like. And if the vibe is move fast, like that's gonna be a better fit for a startup.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about email. I'm trying to figure out like, is there anything that we haven't covered that you think is really important for people to understand when it comes to email marketing?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a lot. I think that I'm just trying to think. You need to. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that we do or the platform does that like is critical to success, but not
Hmm.
obvious, if that makes sense. Or not something that like um, like, we articulate just because it's like, yeah, obviously you do it that way. I think when you watch a great baseball player, they do stuff both in practice and on the field that like you don't realize is critical to their success, but like, how they put the glove on their hand actually is why they're good at turning double plays. And if they did it slightly differently, it wouldn't work. And they would never tell you because they don't even realize that they just sort of it evolved that way. Right. And I think there's a certain degree of that with sending emails is like, how you do your research, what you look for, the things you ask people to do, right? I would say that the one thing that we haven't gone as deep on that I think is super important, we've kind of touched on it a bunch, is really like what is that next ask and what are the things that
Mm,
make sense to ask for. And I think we've thrown out a bunch of ideas, but like that concept right there is super important in success because if you don't have a reasonable ask and you don't put yourself in their shoes, like you just left a conference, what if I ask you to take a meeting, like is that a reasonable ask? Or you're going to a conference, if I ask you to meet, is that like versus drop by the booth versus come to a talk, like just really putting yourself
mm.
in your your prospect shoes and trying to understand like what would they get value out of. um yeah, but there's a lot of like little, really little things that make a big difference. I mean, I came off of the last 3 days trying to set up our first Google AdWords campaign, and there's like a million settings in there, and it's emails kind of no different. Like a lot of failure modes. Um,
What do you so we didn't talk about like list building, which is
yeah,
like maybe the most important part. So what is your perspective on that? What do you recommend how people approach
yeah,
that?
that's a
What are
great
you
one.
doing for that? What do you recommend people
Yeah, and
do if they
I think
work with you with that, right? Like
yeah, if you want to talk about failure, uh like small things that make a big impact or failure modes. Um, so list building. So two things. So one is we at Skip, like we have a team that will research for you, but we don't like doing that. We don't use AI
mhm.
for it. We don't use like AI bots or whatever to go scrape. We don't like doing it because we think so much failure comes from choosing the wrong people, um, that it's better for our clients or customers to do the research because even if it's like, oh man, I spent an hour on that, but it's like, yeah, but now we're reaching out to the right people with the message you were forced to think about because you had to look at a bunch of them in LinkedIn or Apollo or wherever. So I think the first step is like
Mm,
actually realizing that that's a critical part of success is coming up with the right list. And putting yourself in the mindset of like, I didn't just go into Apollo and choose like VPs at Fortune 500s in HR, right? Like, but I gave it some thought, like, oh, not all the VPs, but like the ones that have been in the job for less than 6 months, or the ones that have been in the job for more than 6 years, or, I mean, like, you need to really like think about who's on your list. And if it's just like, oh, I have these three filters, like, did they raise a Series A? Are they a SaaS company? Are they in America? Like, that's not enough. So I think that, are they a VP, right? Like, so coming up with the list is important. I think in terms of tools to do that, Apollo is fine. I think people have reported that it's less good than it used to be, but Apollo is fine. ZoomInfo is better, but it's also something like 100x the cost. So if I were a startup founder, which I am, I use Apollo. Um, I would be wary of the AI tools that tell you they'll do everything because, like, again, it's a key part of success. So if you've outsourced this to an AI bot, like, I don't know what else have you used AI bots for and how well did they do with that? Like, I think that given how important it is, it's worth you being involved because it also gives you an insight into like, what am I going to ask these people? What's my subject line going to look like? Not that you have to write them, like AI can write them, but it's more like you can give more direction if you're like, oh, we've zoomed in on VPs at HR, of HR at startups that have recently
yeah,
raised
yeah.
around that have 20 job openings, and are struggling to fill engineering roles or something. Because they're all in person, they're not remote. Whatever that sort of value prop is, um, or targeting is. But yeah, and then if you hire an outsider to do it, my last thought on this, you hire an outsider, it's a two-step process. First, find companies, have them go put a list together, send it to you, write commentary on every one of them. And these people are great. They're cheap. You can hire them on Upwork. It's, 12, 15 bucks an hour in the Philippines. And they do good work. But so, make sure your list, you go through the companies first, then you have them go find the individual people at those companies, and give them feedback on each one. So if you work with this person over time, that first campaign might take 3 or 4 back and forths to get the right companies and to get the right people. Um, but by the time you're doing your third or fourth campaign, they should be, 90% the right companies and the right people. And the only reason it would be a miss is it's like, oh, that's a Japanese conglomerate that owns the climate tech company I'm targeting, but like it's, so it showed up in the filter of climate tech companies, but it's not actually like, that's too high level. I want, this, like, it should be like, oh, why are you putting climate tech companies in here? I told you no climate tech, right? Like it should, or just find a different person. Um, but I think that again, you also, I guess on that note, a big failure mode is outsourcing this to an eager salesperson, especially a new salesperson.
Hmm.
Make sure that whoever knows who the customers are and has had those conversations is choosing who to talk to at the top of the funnel. Because if you go to ChatGPT and are like, oh, I have this product that's awesome for X, it'll be like, great, you should sell it to these people, right? And if you've been doing this for a year and 80% of those people have never bought because they've raised too much money or they've raised too little money or there's some other attribute, right? If you hire an AE, they're going to be excited. They're going to be like, oh, I have a list of 1,000 people. It's great, and it's like, yeah, 80% of these people are trash. Like they're never going to buy because we've talked to them and they're not a good fit. So bring all that knowledge to your list building. Outsource it or don't outsource it, but make sure that you're being really conscious about it and thoughtful about it and make sure that you're not you're taking responsibility for like, yeah, if you don't get any meetings, better than 50-50 chance the problem was the list.
Yeah, I think the list is everything, actually. Like, I think the example you gave of someone who reached out to you with like email infrastructure, you're on the right list. Like, you're the guy, that's what you buy. Like, they could write it 80 words, they could write it 580 words. Like, I think you would have responded either way, right? Because, like, you are the
Maybe not
right person.
580. I mean, I think at some point you're just like delete, like this is too much. Um, but yeah, I think you're right. I think that like getting it right, I mean, if you're reaching out to the right person, think about AdWords. Like if you're putting an ad in front of somebody, I mean, it's digital, it's all digital marketing, right? If you put an
Yep.
ad in front of somebody that's just not interested in that thing, like if somebody was like, oh, I have this great product for smokers, like it's like, I don't smoke. Like I'm not, I'm
Right.
just going to
It's just
delete
not,
it,
I'm not
right?
gonna buy
It's
it.
not,
Yeah.
it's just noise, right? But if I was a smoker, it'd be like, oh, I want to quit smoking. It seems like the cool thing to do. I'll click on your ad. So I think it's the same thing. Like if you can still screw it up, but if you don't have the right people that you're targeting, it doesn't matter how great your email copy is, how great your subject line is, how great the rest of it is. Like they're not going to open it, they're not going to reply, they're not going to become a customer. I think I mean maybe that's another point here, which was sort of implied. People will meet with you who don't become customers, and if you're reaching out to
Mm.
people that are in that I mean, I found this with my own work, like for fractional, I don't really do cold outreach for fractional, it's all referral, but for some of the stuff, like I was reaching out to people that were, or had an audience that was too early stage. And they hadn't raised $500,000 or $1 million. And they were, working out of their mom's basement with, a $50 budget. And it's like, yeah, you can't, like, I can't engage with you. There's nothing I can do. I don't have the products that you have, Gregory. There's like, no, you read the newsletter. That's my free sort of solution here. Like, I don't have anything else for those people. And I realized that like a lot of the outreach that had been done was going to these like very, very early stage pre-seed, pre-seed startups, because I guess pre-seeds now involves money. Um, and they were never going to
Pre-seed is
buy.
around now. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. And so I think like this, as soon as I realized that, I was like, yeah, we're done. Like I don't need to do this anymore. Same thing with the podcast I used to do. Like it ended up attracting a very, very early stage audience, which is great, but like it led to no business. And so it's sort of like that's just the wrong audience. So why invest in it? And with email, you can
Yeah,
choose, right? With
that's
email,
a
LinkedIn outreach, you
larger
choose your audience.
question. Yeah. Interesting. So a couple of tips, like, or things that I do. I run a micro campaign for like every event I do. So, and that's just personally with my business now, but that was
Great idea.
how I've always done it. I guess even big picture, I would say like I've been in B2B a long time. And so before COVID, the vast majority of the budget was always spent on trade shows. And I feel like we're going back to that, which I think is the right way, like B2B, expensive products in general. Like we're not talking like these little micro SaaS things that get sold for 20 bucks a month. they're sold in person, and that's how they work, right? And so what we always did was like we'd spend money on trade shows. So now you've got this list of people that you built, however you built, like you invited them, you met them. There's all kinds of levels to it, right? They signed up at the booth, like, and you can build micro campaigns around that, right? And the context is like we met at the event. It's very simple. It's very simple, right? And my experience has always been that in general, people respond really well to that. And then you can build one for each campaign, and then if you attend an event or you're on a panel, you can build a campaign around that, right? With like whoever you met there. And so I think a lot about these like kind of contextually based campaigns. And I do this now for everything. I have like a micro campaign for like every event I attend. If I put on this webinar, there'll be something very specific that's like, if you attend this webinar, this is like my value prop. And the other thing I'll offer up, and I'm curious what your thoughts are, is like I do a lot of campaigns now that like they're just awareness. They're like, join the newsletter, check out this article. Like I don't really push the sale in
Yeah, like
a
that's
lot
way more
of
effective. Way
yeah, and
more
I feel
effective.
like that's something that I should have done when I was younger. And so like, yeah, some of these like high growth, you understand the environment, right? Most like startups, so there's just a lot of pressure to sell. And so people, a lot of the marketing I ever did, people's feedback were like, throw this the CTA in there, put like $100 credit off. I'm like $100 credit off like $100,000 product. Like it doesn't make any sense, right? So, but there's like
Plus,
people
it's
are just
not their
like,
money anyway. So,
yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah,
you got to
exactly.
understand. You got to understand your persona, right? Like, it's not like founders. Like, yeah, $100 off $1,000 subscription for a founder when it's their money matters. $100 off anything if you're selling to
Corporate
corporates.
manager, right? It doesn't
Nobody gives a
matter.
crap because it's not their money anyway. Is it in the budget or is it not in the budget? So, um, yeah, I love all those micro campaign ideas. I think people really under rotate on doing cold outreach around events, but before and after, it's a big use case for Skip, and that's because it gives you instant credibility. Like, oh, you know about the conference. One of the things I love to do. People are like, oh, we
100%.
didn't sponsor it, so I don't have a list. It's like, who cares? If it's the biggest conference in your industry, assume they're going to be there.
I assume it's
And
big.
then they can
Yes.
be like, "Oh, I'm not going this year," and you're like, "Great, do you want to do a Zoom?" Like, it's still it's a negative response that they're not going to the conference, but they still might meet with you, right? And now you have their attention. So yeah, conferences are a great one, and you don't need to do all this nonsense AI personalization. It's just like, you're going to be at TechCrunch this year. Would love to grab coffee. Like that's it. That's that.
There's tons of examples. I'm so glad you brought that up because who was I talking to recently? I was like, there's so many examples like this that I just think aren't creative enough. So like Seattle Tech Week is huge here in Seattle. So if you had a campaign, it's like, hey, are you doing something for Seattle Tech Week? Basically, if you're in Seattle, you know about it, and the answer is yes or no. And if you don't know about it, you're going to be like, well, thanks for reminding me
Right.
about Seattle Tech Week, right? So there's tons of ways to incorporate the context of like what's happening in the industry around your like even marketing. I wouldn't even just say email, your marketing, right? And I think that works really well because it like helps people like get a reminder about something important. And two, like now there's a context around the conversation. I feel like people are a lot more comfortable like joining you in a conversation, and that so there's some kind of like to kick it off. I feel like people want to talk to you if you give them
Right.
something to talk
Well,
about.
and I mean, I think the Tech Week example is phenomenal because it's also like the mentality of the person, right? If you're just like, oh, people
Mhm.
going to Tech Week, like,
Right.
fine, that's better than nothing. But if it's like, oh, Gregory going to Tech Week, like he's looking for prospects, he's hosting events, right? His experience for Tech Week could be very different than Betty, who's looking for a job, or Mark, who's looking for a co-founder, or John, who's thinking about leaving his job at Amazon to do a startup, right? Like I think that when you really dive into like what is the persona that you're targeting and what do they want to get out of this event, like the emails you send to that event, like, yes, hey, are you going to be a Tech Week, do you want to meet up, could be effective. But if you went one level deeper and we're like, hey John, we're talking to Amazon employees about their like startup ambitions, like that is even better depending on what you're selling. um,
Yeah. What about for enterprise? What about for people who are selling to like, they do sell director and above, they do sell VP and above. Like what do you recommend for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, you may be surprised to hear this, but micro campaigns, I think there actually the tendency is to over rotate on conferences. So,
Mm,
people in sort of like the long sales cycle enterprise kind of put all their eggs in the conference basket. and two things happen. One is like a lot happens at once, and so they don't do all the follow-up they need to do. They don't do all the outreach they need to do. Maybe they're trying to close a big deal, so it's like, oh, I met 100 people at the booth. I should write emails to all of them. I should follow up. But like four were ready to buy now, so I'm going to spend my time on those four. And
Yeah.
like those other 96 were your next 2 quarters of quota, but like you dropped them on the floor because you were too focused on the four that were your quota right now. So um, I think that I think that the advantage of thinking about it as micro campaigns is like you don't have to have these big thoughts about like every company everywhere that's possibly in your market and splitting it up. You can just be like, look, going to this conference or this next couple months, right? I'm gonna focus on Seattle area airplane manufacturers or
Yeah.
airplane parts makers, right? And be more focused. Um, uh, you know, I think that the big I work with a lot of enterprise companies. I think the biggest challenge they have is that they have a small market. Like in terms of, it might be $1 billion market, but there may be 500 companies in it or 1,000 companies, depending on what they sell. And so I think you run into problems where you try and take cut and paste or copy a strategy from an SMB market and bring it to that, right? Like GTM engineers, like you don't really need GTM engineers for I would argue for a big enterprise sale. Like it's, all this like, oh, we need to
Mm.
automate it, we need to lead score, we need to do all these, we need to send like scrape the internet and send thousands of emails a week. Like you don't if you only have 200 customers, right? So or 200 possible customers. You need to be much more thoughtful about everything that you do. You need to retarget. You need like it's just a different motion. So yeah, I think micro campaigns especially have a place. I think large scale
Mhm.
campaigns do not. Um, and one of the things that hasn't come up from a lead list standpoint is reverse is basically like reverse lookup is finding de-anonymizing your visitors with a
Oh,
tool like
yeah.
RB2B or Warmly, where it'll tell you like, oh, Gregory Kennedy visited your website. Here's his LinkedIn. Like for enterprise, it's great because like, oh, somebody from Lockheed Martin visited your website. Like, the ones that will tell you the actual individual's name are super useful.
Yeah, yeah. I have a person I work with, Sift Data, that does that, and like they'll offer the full de-anonymized like company and I think person because the people that were doing this, there's a lot of restrictions now, and so you don't get as much information as you would like. And I think this is a great point too because um, we're going into a world where you're getting less traffic to your website, and so I think that like the traffic you do get, it's per, it's high intent. Like, why would they
Right.
go there, right? Unless they made a mistake, which is possible. But the people who go there that are in your target, like high intent, like they don't go to the website now unless like they really
Right.
want to understand about your product and their end market. So yeah, I think that's a great way to take advantage of that. And then whenever I've been targeted that way, the emails usually pretty stand out. Like, because I expect to
No,
get the
but
email.
you're aware of the brand, right? You were just on the
Correct.
website.
But I
So
expect to get if I go to the event, I expect if I sign up for something, I know they got my email, right? But this is like, oh, that's interesting. Like, and I've never felt negatively about it. Like I visited the website and then I got an email from a
yeah,
rep or
just
something like,
looks like they're
hey,
on it. Yeah,
just
I think
that's
I think
exactly what it looks
something
like.
in
That's
there
what I
is
thought.
worth
Yeah.
mentioning, which is like this all exists within the broader context of marketing. And if you have a good brand, right, people have heard of your brand, your cold emails are more likely to be open, right?
Yeah.
And so the part of it's like, oh, if they just went to the website and you get an email, you're more likely to open it because you have heard of the brand is part of why that works. But I think a lot of startup founders are like, oh, this isn't working. And it's like, yeah, nobody's heard of you. You're not on LinkedIn. You don't have a website or your website sucks. You're not running ads. Like the reason why it works for Rippling is Rippling spends hundreds of millions of dollars running ads everywhere, sponsoring events, the rest of it. And so when you get a cold email from somebody at Rippling, it's like, yeah, I'll open it because I've heard of Rippling. You might not open it still. You might be like, yeah, I've got a deal, I'm good. But like the reality is that like the open rates for a Rippling campaign are higher because of all of that marketing spend going on, um, you know, concurrently with their email marketing. And so I think like it's important to remember that it's all tied together. And, if you do multiple channels at once, like sometimes it'll be more effective than doing one at a time.
Yeah, that's a great. I was actually thinking that earlier when I can't remember what you were talking about, but like that having more awareness with your brand will impact all of these channels. And it's pretty measurable too if you do a good job at it. I think people struggle with the fact that like it's not cheap, and then it takes time to see to see the impact. But it will happen. I've even seen companies where it was very clear that they like the early stage, and my analysis was that they had maxed out what they could do with no brand. That there was almost like a ceiling to that growth, and there's a
Right.
certain number of like customers and just people that they can get, and then to get to the next level, they need to have that like the awareness is not the right word. They need to have the trust that a brand brings, right? Like if you're able to spend the money to go to SaaStr or whatever it is, like you're on that tier and people trust you more.
Right.
That's the essence of it. It's not just that like, oh, we've got this cool brand and the marketing team spent a bunch of money on junk ads no one clicked on. It's that like you're in a tier of company where people trust you, they believe you're going to be around in the future, they want to take or buy your software and use it because like they have confidence in it. And that part's like really important.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, I don't see any more questions. We still got a few people hanging on, but that was great. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Yeah, I'll be in the Bay Area soon, so hopefully we can meet up in person again sometime.
Yeah.
All right.
TechCrunch. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.